Welcome to the Families Through Surrogacy podcast.
Glad to be here.
Today we're taking a deep dive into international surrogacy and specifically Mexico's kind of growing popularity as a destination for intended parents.
Yeah, Mexico's really become a hot spot, and for good reason.
And what is it about Mexico that makes it so appealing to intended parents?
Well, I think it boils down to a few key factors. You've got affordability, a supportive legal framework,
Mm-hmm.
and accessibility for many.
Yeah, that accessibility is huge, right? When you're considering a journey as complex as surrogacy, having a location that's relatively easy to get to is a big plus.
Absolutely. And Mexico really checks all those boxes.
Now, in the research you sent over, you highlighted two cities in particular, Merida and Cancun.
Right.
What makes those stand out as surrogacy destinations?
Well, they offer very different experiences, but they both have their advantages. Cancun, for example, is known for being very welcoming to LGBTQ plus intended parents.
Oh, that's great to hear.
It's located in the state of Quintana Roo, which has a really supportive legal system when it comes to diverse family structures.
So that's something that LGBTQ plus couples should definitely keep in mind when they're researching destinations.
For sure. Now, Merida is a bit different. It's in the Yucatan state, and the legal approach there leans more towards traditional family structures.
So it's really important to do your homework and understand the legal nuances of each state.
Exactly. And that's where working with agencies experienced in navigating those state-specific regulations is essential.
So choosing the right agency is crucial no matter where you go in Mexico.
Absolutely.
But maybe even more so in a place like Merida, where the laws might be a bit stricter for certain families.
Precisely. A knowledgeable agency can make all the difference in ensuring a smooth and legally sound process.
Now, regardless of the location,
Hmm.
what are some of the kind of overall advantages of choosing Mexico for surrogacy?
Well, one huge advantage in Mexico is that intended parents are typically listed on the birth certificate right away.
Oh, wow. So there's no legal battle to get your name on the birth certificate. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it really provides a lot of peace of mind for intended parents.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned Merida and Cancun being quite different.
Hmm.
When I think of Merida, I picture a charming historical city with a more relaxed pace. Am I on the right track?
You are spot on. Think vibrant markets, exploring ancient Mayan ruins, or taking a dip in those incredible natural sinkholes called cenotes.
Cenotes. I've always wanted to see one of those.
Oh, they're amazing. Merida is perfect for those who want to immerse themselves in the culture and just soak in that tranquil atmosphere.
It sounds like a really ideal setting, especially when you're preparing for the arrival of a new baby and you might want a slower pace of life.
Yeah, it's almost like a built-in way to manage the stress of the journey.
Absolutely. Now, Cancun, on the other hand, I'm picturing something totally different, right? More like bustling resort life.
Exactly. Cancun has a completely different energy. Think turquoise waters, world-class snorkeling, day trips to Mayan ruins like Tulum, even vibrant nightlife if you're so inclined.
So it really depends on what you're looking for, right? Do you envision yourself relaxing in a tranquil historical setting like Merida? Or are you drawn to that high-energy resort life of Cancun?
It's all about finding the environment that best suits your needs and your personality during this special time.
Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the logistics of traveling to Mexico for surrogacy.
Okay.
What can intended parents expect in terms of just getting there, getting settled, and all of that?
Well, most international flights land in Cancun, which makes access pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
But here's a crucial detail that often gets overlooked, making sure your travel documents are valid for an extended stay.
Right, because you'll be in Mexico for a while after the birth.
Exactly. You don't want to get caught out with expired passports or visas.
That's a great point. Any other essential details that intended parents should be aware of?
Another thing that often surprises people is that car seats, especially for infants,
Right.
aren't commonly provided in taxis or rental cars.
Okay, so that's something to plan for.
Yeah. It's best to inquire with your surrogacy clinic about borrowing one or renting one so you can safely transport your newborn from the hospital.
That's a great tip. I wouldn't have even thought about that.
It's the little things, right?
What about accommodation? Any suggestions on what types of places work best for families going through surrogacy in Mexico?
Apartments or family-friendly hotels with kitchens are usually ideal.
I can see why having that flexibility to prepare bottles and meals would be so valuable.
It makes a big difference, and don't forget to negotiate long-term rental agreements for better rates and flexibility with check-in and check-out dates.
Right, because you never know exactly when the baby's going to arrive, right?
Right.
So that flexibility is key.
Exactly.
What about getting around town? Are taxis the way to go?
Taxis are an option, but ride-hailing apps like Uber and Didi are incredibly popular and usually more affordable.
Oh, good to know.
There's also an app called Bolt, which is particularly useful in Cancun for budget-friendly rides,
So multiple transportation options, that's always good to have.
and they're all pretty easy to use.
Now let's talk food.
Okay.
When you're caring for a newborn, sometimes those late-night cravings hit, or you just need an easy meal option. Is delivery readily available in Mexico?
Oh, absolutely. Mexico has a thriving food delivery scene.
Oh, fantastic.
Apps like Rappi, Uber Eats, and Didi Food offer tons of different cuisines,
Sounds delicious.
all delivered right to your doorstep.
So you don't even have to leave your apartment if you don't want to.
Nope.
This is making Mexico sound more and more appealing by the minute.
It's a pretty great place to be.
What about communication, though? Is the language barrier a major concern?
It can be, but Google Translate is a lifesaver, I would say.
It really is.
Download the Spanish language pack in advance so you can use it offline. You can decipher menus, understand grocery labels, even communicate basic needs if you run into any language barriers.
Being prepared is so important.
For sure.
Now, this might seem like a small detail, but I think it's worth mentioning. Walkability.
Okay.
Is it important to consider the location of your accommodation in relation to shops and other essential services?
You're absolutely right. Choosing a place within walking distance of shops, pharmacies, restaurants can make a world of difference, especially with a newborn.
Yeah, all those little errands become much easier when you don't have to rely on transportation every time.
Exactly. Convenience is key.
Great point. It's
Yeah.
those little things that can really add up and impact your overall experience.
For sure.
We've covered a lot of ground here. Travel, accommodation, transportation, food, even language and walkability. I'm feeling much more prepared for daily life in Mexico now, but what about the final steps, bringing baby home?
Right. Well, that's where your agency steps in again
Okay,
to guide you through the process of obtaining the birth certificate and passport for your baby.
okay. And those are essential for international travel, of course. That's a relief. Knowing you have expert guidance during those final stages must take a lot of pressure off.
It definitely helps to have someone there who knows the ropes.
I imagine there's still some waiting involved, though, right?
Yes. Managing expectations is key.
Hmm.
The entire process, including obtaining documents and completing legal procedures,
Right.
can take several weeks, even longer depending on your home country's regulations.
So patience is a virtue, especially in this situation.
Absolutely.
And speaking of documentation, what specific documents do parents need to have in order to bring their baby home?
You'll need the birth certificate, of course, along with all medical records
Okay.
related to the birth and your baby's health. And don't forget the citizenship or visa applications for your home country, which are essential for your baby to legally enter and reside there.
Okay, so birth certificate, medical records, and citizenship or visa applications.
You got it.
We've covered a lot of practical aspects of surrogacy in Mexico.
You have.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I think it's essential to touch on the emotional dimension of this journey. It's an incredible experience filled with joy and anticipation, but I imagine it can also be emotionally challenging at times.
Oh, absolutely. It's a roller coaster of emotions.
And we'll definitely delve deeper into those emotional aspects in the next part of our deep dive. But for now, I think we've covered a fantastic amount of ground, giving our listeners a solid overview of what to expect when considering surrogacy in Mexico. We've explored the legal landscape, compared those unique vibes of Merida and Cancun,
Right.
and provided some really practical tips for navigating daily life and the final steps of bringing baby home.
It's a lot to take in, but hopefully it's a helpful starting point for anyone considering this path to parenthood.
Absolutely.
So imagine you've decided Mexico is right for you, and you've selected an agency.
Okay.
Typically, the first step is a consultation to discuss your needs and preferences.
So it's about establishing that strong partnership
Mm-hmm.
based on mutual understanding.
Yeah.
What kind of topics come up during this initial consultation?
You'll discuss things like your preferred family structure,
Hmm.
budget, and timeline.
Okay.
The agency will explain the legal requirements, answer any questions you have,
Mhm.
really just making sure everyone is on the same page from the start.
And I imagine choosing a surrogate is a big part of this early stage.
Absolutely.
What does that process look like in Mexico?
Reputable agencies have established processes for safe and ethical matching. They have databases of screened and qualified surrogates who have undergone medical and psychological evaluations. The agency will present you with profiles of potential surrogates,
Okay.
aligning with your preferences.
Mm.
You can review those profiles, ask questions, even have virtual or in-person meetings.
So it sounds very thorough and personalized, which I think is reassuring.
It is. Building trust is key.
Absolutely.
And once you've chosen a surrogate, the next stage usually involves legal contracts and agreements.
Things are getting official.
Yeah.
What kind of legal documents are we talking about here?
The agency works with legal professionals
Mm-hmm.
specializing in surrogacy law
Okay.
to create those comprehensive contracts outlining everyone's rights and responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
The intended parents, the surrogate, and the agency itself.
And these contracts cover everything, right? Legal rights, financial arrangements, even potential complications. Like what if the pregnancy doesn't go as planned?
Right, those are called contingencies, and they're all addressed in the contract. It's designed to protect everyone's interests, and it's really crucial for all parties to review those contracts carefully with their own legal counsel before signing.
Once the legal side is sorted, what about the medical aspects? When does that embryo transfer happen?
Typically, after the contracts are signed,
Yeah.
the surrogate undergoes medical preparations for the embryo transfer.
Mm.
This may involve hormonal treatments to prepare her uterus for implantation.
Okay.
Simultaneously, the intended parents
Right.
are working with a fertility clinic to create embryos through in vitro fertilization, or IVF, using their own or donor eggs and sperm, depending on their situation,
So there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
all in preparation for that crucial moment, embryo transfer. Once it's successfully done,
Mhm.
the surrogate receives regular medical care and monitoring throughout the pregnancy. Intended parents are usually kept informed through updates and ultrasounds.
So it really is a journey shared across borders. And then finally comes the long-awaited birth.
Exactly. And in Mexico, as we mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm.
intended parents are usually recognized as the legal parents immediately,
Right.
which makes obtaining the baby's birth certificate and passport much easier.
That's a huge advantage and a huge relief.
It is.
So it sounds like throughout this entire process,
Yeah.
from the initial consultation to bringing the baby home,
Mm-hmm.
the agency plays a really vital role.
Absolutely. A reputable and experienced agency
Right.
understands the complexities and can guide you through the legal, medical, even emotional aspects.
And speaking of important considerations,
Okay.
let's talk about costs.
Okay.
Surrogacy is a significant financial investment,
It is.
and it's essential to have a clear picture of the expenses involved.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it can vary quite a bit.
You're right. The overall cost of surrogacy in Mexico depends on several factors.
Okay.
You've got agency fees, surrogate compensation,
Mm-hmm.
medical expenses, legal fees,
Mm-hmm.
travel costs, living expenses during your stay.
It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all price tag.
No, it's not, but reputable agencies
Right.
will give you a detailed breakdown of estimated costs up front, so
Okay.
you can plan accordingly and avoid any surprises.
Okay.
They should be transparent about any potential additional expenses that might come up.
Financial clarity is key.
Absolutely.
Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the emotional side of surrogacy.
Okay.
It's an incredible journey filled with joy and anticipation,
It is.
but it can also be emotionally challenging.
Oh, absolutely. It's a roller coaster of emotions.
What kind of emotional challenges do intended parents often face during this process?
Well, they often experience a mix of anxiety, impatience, gratitude,
Right.
sometimes even guilt or a sense of loss of control.
What advice would you give to intended parents who are navigating those complex emotions?
Self-care is crucial.
Okay.
Take time for yourself, do things you enjoy,
Mhm.
and don't be afraid to lean on loved ones, therapists, or support groups specifically designed for intended parents.
So it's about prioritizing your own well-being,
Exactly.
even amidst all the excitement and anticipation.
And remember, communication is key.
Mm-hmm.
Talk openly with your partner, your agency, and your surrogate.
Okay.
Building those strong communication channels can really foster trust and understanding,
Mm-hmm.
which can make the journey smoother for everyone.
It's like creating that supportive network where everyone feels heard and validated.
That's a great way to put it.
But hopefully it's equipped our listeners with the knowledge and resources they need to make informed decisions.
I hope so. And if you're considering surrogacy in Mexico or anywhere else,
Right.
don't hesitate to seek guidance from reputable agencies, legal professionals, support groups. There's a wealth of information and support available to help you navigate this incredible journey.
That's great advice. And we want to thank all of our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into surrogacy in Mexico.
It's been a pleasure.
It has. We hope you found it informative and insightful. And to stay up to date on all things surrogacy, be sure to like and follow our Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok pages.
Yes, we're very active on social media.
We are. We share tons of tips, tricks, and live updates there. It's a great way to connect with our growing community.
We love hearing from our listeners.
We do. Thanks again for tuning in.
Until next time.
We'll catch you in our next episode of the Families Through Surrogacy podcast.